Where do you see us going now?
Well, there are at least 150 AI principles out there, almost 200 in fact. And I think that's helpful, but it's very important that we boil these things down, that we create something actionable and certifiable out of this, that we can create boundaries for how these systems should be used and the domains in which they should be deployed. And we need more international collaboration for that. Now, we've done this in the past. We've collaborated to stop the use of CFCs and save our ozone layer. We've collaborated to stop the Millennium Bug, which seems like a silly thing now, but at the time was quite problematic. And a lot of people worked very hard to solve that. I think we can do something similar with AI, but we need to have a very strong international collaboration and very honest discussions about how different styles of governance, for example, can intermesh with these rules so that we find something that works more or less for everyone and every jurisdiction.
And in this context, Jim, do you think that the community, the tech community, is open for applying these regulation standards as they come, or is there more the wish to have more freedom to operate, to really build on the value of technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the biggest worry right now that I have, and something that we should all be thinking about, is it's a tendency, it's called ethics washing. So we kind of used to the term greenwashing, where companies say that they're so sustainable and that they care about the planet and they don't want you to print paper, etc. The same is now happening with ethics, because these companies have PR advisors or other smart people say, well, this could be an issue. Perhaps we should come up with our own ethical principles and publish them on our website. And that way they cannot bother us. That's not the right approach. We, as Nell said, we need actionable insights. We need to know what's going on under the hood. So, for example, Deloitte has, the consultancy firm has come up with sort of a quality mark, like fair trade for algorithms. I think that is very smart of a company like that. And you'll see more of these initiatives where a third party, like forensic AI, a party can actually look under the hood and say, okay, so you've published these ethical guidelines on your website, but we see that actually you're not making use of this principle, fairness or accuracy or confidentiality or transparency, and they give them some homework to actually get there in order.
Nell, do you see it the same way?
Absolutely. I think that there are too many pernicious abstractions in the world, too many floaty descriptions of things that aren't really made concrete. And to go back to that Lord of the Rings analogy, I think sometimes people can be seduced by their precious, their magical technology, and want to use it in ways that it shouldn't be. And we need to hold people accountable for that. And I think initiatives like Jim's, which can create more knowledge in society, gives more power to our society in order to be aware of these technologies, how they could be used, and to enable people to sort of stand up, or at the very least, to raise questions, very important questions.
That's a very good aspect. And before we close this round, I would like to each of you just give our audience some kind of feedback or advice. If they look into their enterprises and their organizations, how would you approach this? How would you recommend looking into both aspects of what we just discussed the last almost half hour?
May I start?
Sure, okay.
So back in the early 80s, there was a skyscraper built in Manhattan. It was quite an avant-garde design. And the building was fully constructed. There were tenants moving into it. And an architectural student pointed out that if the wind blew at just the right angle, that building would collapse. And if that building collapsed, it would kill thousands of people. And it just shows that hundreds or thousands of people can work on a project, and it only takes one person to spot something and then to raise the very important question, and that can have a massive difference on outcomes. So I would recommend that organizations have some kind of a resource within the organization at the highest level where people can take any ethical or safety concerns that they come across, so that they can bypass kind of middle management or whatever, who might think, oh, well, you know, this is maybe important, but not right now. And I think the more that organizations have that ability for people to talk straight to senior leadership, I think a lot of organizations are going to avoid a lot of potential massive liabilities if they structure their organizations in that way and have the right incentives within that org and within the culture around it to make people a little bit more transparent and enable people or empower them to ask those difficult questions.
Jim, if you would be one of the team members working in a hospital or in a laboratory or in any healthcare organization, what would you apply as a principle based on what we discussed here in the context of technology in the lead versus human in the lead?
I would probably record a video of myself with this ring saying, "My precious." No. What would I do? Well, I think Nell makes a great point, which, of course, for a debate is not really good to say, but it's so true. So let me just build on that and say, if I was in a hospital setting, as you say, I would probably encourage the development of, I call them pizza teams. Pizza teams are small teams, multidisciplinary. So a data scientist, a UX designer, a caregiver, someone from HR, a lawyer, a hustler, a programmer, and that's it. If you need more than 2 pizzas to feed them, the team is getting too big. That's an Amazon rule. So small teams, and then you don't tell them what to do. That's very important. You just say, well, we are very data rich, but we want to do better. We want to increase patient satisfaction, or we just come up with a simple, largely vague task and give them the right data, and you'll see that within a day or 2 or 3, they actually will come up with a concept that helps you sharpen the way you think about using AI in your hospital. And what I just learned from Nell is that you need to add one more person to this team, and that is a patient, right? Patient included innovation is more powerful and more needed than ever. So indeed, with the one person who looked at the skyscraper and thought, you also need to have a patient included in these design sprints when you're coming up with your proof of concept or your MVP. At least listen to these voices, because in the next round, you can use those worries, these thoughts, to actually do better and say, listen, this is not something we came up with. We did it together with our patients.
That's very good. Thank you for that feedback.